So I went to go see The Lone Ranger, the new Disney version. Now, it stars Johnny Depp as Tonto. We have Armie Hammer as John Reid, aka the Lone Ranger. And it's directed by Gore Verbinski. If you don't know who he is, he's the man who did the American remake of The Ring, as well as the last 3 Pirates of the Caribbean films. And thinking about that, that really explains so many things in this movie. It really does. So, right up front, I have really mixed feelings about this movie. I'm kind of tempted to say it's going to go on my list of sort of guilty pleasures, because I had fun at the movie, but at the same time, while I was watching it, I can look back and I can see a whole bunch of problems, things that really should bother me, but for some reason they don't quite so much. So I can look at them and say, well, that wasn't done well, and what the heck were you doing there, and what the hell are you thinking? But I still ended up enjoying it overall. But it's a little bit too early to tell. A lot of those things may sort of sour over time, and I may just not really be able to enjoy it in future viewings. Kind of like almost all of the Pirates of the Caribbean movies for me. And really, that's kind of part of the problem here. It feels very much like the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, which is not unsurprising since, as I mentioned, Gore Verbinski, the same director for most of the Pirates of the Caribbean movies here. But yeah, it has the same feel, and it's not helped by the fact that you have Johnny Depp as Tonto, which is pretty much the same sort of character. He's the same sort of fit, the same sort of humor. He does the same. He fills a lot of the same roles as Captain Jack Sparrow in the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, and that also sort of leads to a lot of my problem with the movie, is that it has this real weird tonal whiplash to it. On the one hand, it tries to be a very serious, well, not very serious, but a sort of an honest Western. So, you have Armie Hammer's character. He comes back to his hometown after almost 10 years away at law school. He's the lawyer now, and he's going to be the county prosecutor, and, he's believes in justice and the law and right, and he's a pacifist, and we should, prosecute criminals and treat them fairly, and not, have the gang justice and the posses. And so he comes back after years away, and on his train there's this huge opening set piece that's really fantastic, where the villain, one of the villains for the piece, he's being transported to be hung. He's a big outlaw, and they break him out of the train, and it's the standard sort of Western plot where the posse gets brought together, the Rangers get together, and they go track down this outlaw, and they all get killed except for Armie Hammer, and he has to seek justice for his fallen brother, who's the head of the Rangers there. And, it's that sort of typical Western plot, that sort of revenge, that although it's sort of a weird revenge justice kind of feeling that he has. And so there's that, but at the same time you throw in Tonto to the mix, who's just, I don't know, he's this weird comedic set piece thing that sort of walks around and mulls, and mugs for the camera and chews scenery and just does his best to steal scenes. And has some great one-liners and things like that, but it just doesn't really fit with a lot of the rest of the tone of the movie. And then you add in that sort of his side of the film is this weird kind of mystical mumbo-jumbo kind of thing, where it involves visions and nature being out of balance, which has like crazy carnivorous like bunny rabbits that attack. It's weird, and a lot of that actually ends up being sort of not addressed in this film, and again I get the feeling that they're sort of setting up for future movies, but at the same time you can't really bring up a lot of this mystical stuff and just not address it at all. And well, they address it a little bit, but they address it by sort of just kind of going, oh, that crazy Tonto, he's just, ooh, crazy, and but so you can't have it in there and show visions that these things see and how strange and things are going oddly, and then tell your audience to just not pay any attention to it and not deal with it at all. You see, it's just, there's just this weird, it's like they took two separate scripts that were both for Westerns and sort of just kind of stitched them together. And you can sort of see the seams in parts. You know, the narrative still flows for the most part, but it's just, it just doesn't feel like everything meshes as well as it should. So that's really my big issue with the film. You know, other than its length to an extent, it does feel really long. So there were parts that could be taken out. Although in kind of Western, you know, typical Western style, there's these fantastic wide shots of scenery, and you know, things are sort of visually very impressive. But that does mean the middle of the movie, which doesn't have very many action set pieces at all, ends up feeling very long. And almost in like a 2.5 hour long film, that's unfortunate. You have the opening set piece, which is fantastic, and then there's not really much else in the way of action until the final set piece, which is done to the final movement in the William Tell Overture, which, you know, famous Lone Ranger, you know, theme song, and it's a brilliant set piece. It's fantastic. I mean, it's a very long action scene, but it is not lacking for excitement and fun. It really is an amazing set piece. I almost suggest people go see it just for that, except it's really long. If it had been like an hour, if it had been like a 90-minute movie, I'd say go see it just for that action set piece alone, because it's well worth it in that case. But at 2.5 hours, it's maybe a little bit long. If you're kind of on the if you're on the edge of going to see this film, you know, if it looks interesting-ish and you're not put off by you know, reviews and things like that, go see it for that ending set piece. It's bloody brilliant. But for the most part, though, I don't know. And the Armie Hammer and Johnny Depp do have good chemistry together, but so the actors do, but the characters don't. And that's another thing that sort of felt really weird to me. Pretty much the entire movie is Armie Hammer being sort of the upright Boy Scout kind of, you know, we have to bring them to justice, and no, we can't kill them in cold blood, and rah, you know, do the right thing. And Johnny Depp just, the Tonto character, he just constantly puts him down and makes fun of him, and just sort of denigrates the Lone Ranger character. You know, to the point where they don't, I don't know, there's a point in the film where, you know, the Armie Hammer's character, the Lone Ranger, he's just going to leave Tonto to die, except he needs him, so he has to come back and save him just for the sake of it. And it just, I don't know, it feels off. And maybe I'd be more forgiving of some of these things if it wasn't sort of a Lone Ranger movie, but it doesn't, but because of them, it doesn't really feel terribly much like a Lone Ranger movie to me. Except for parts like the final action set piece. They do a hi-ho silver away sort of thing. You know, so there's parts of a movie that I would really like to see and that I find really enjoyable, sort of scattered throughout the plot. But it's brought down by this weird other film that just, it doesn't appeal nearly so much. Overall, though, I have to say I had fun. And it's adequately shot. It's, you know, it's decent. It's pretty decently done. As I said, on par with any of the Pirates of the Caribbean films as far as editing and you know, direction and things like that. That's all done decently well. But yeah, no, I had fun. I wouldn't go so far to say that it's a good movie, but it's not a complete waste of money. I'll say that. I hesitate to recommend it to people because, as I said, there's very specific things about it that I enjoy that I know a lot of other people sort of kind of are on the fence about. But hopefully, what I've said here kind of gives you a sense of whether or not you might enjoy it, because that's really kind of what I'm going for, and it's also kind of to help me sort of work out my thoughts in my head too. So until next time, enjoy film. Later, guys.